Good morning. The basic and probably one of the most frequently mentioned problems concerning Tesla Model 3 is the poor quality of the body. This remark concerns both the fit of all flaps and even non-opening elements, but also the quality of the paint and protection against corrosion. Users sometimes try to improve the fit on their own, especially the flaps of both trunks, which has the greatest chance of success, but by no means 100%. In addition, the rear doors are often in worse condition than the front ones, because due to the shape of the bodywork, they are much more exposed to impacts from stones and gravel, which damages the paintwork. Interestingly, some detailing companies simply do not undertake work on the Model 3 for fear of damaging the paintwork. It can come off in sheets with masking tape or when using a pressure washer. The paint can also disappear around the edges of the sills, of course giving way to corrosion. Tesla tried to save the situation by offering some customers mud flaps. These mud flaps come in two sizes, and the larger ones hit and scrape the road during heavy braking, or simply on roads of poor quality. Some users did not install them or shorten them themselves. Another problem is cracking windows, usually rear windows, and glass roofs. This is probably due to the body being too stiff, but the manufacturer is silent on this issue. The source mix on warranty repairs of such problems is interesting. According to some sources, only cars that had been on the road for a few weeks at most were usually repaired under warranty, while according to others, this was always done without unnecessary delay, regardless of the age of the model. Perhaps it simply depends on the country and the quality of service at the authorized service center. Not enough? Let's add more. There were units that were missing screws, nuts, and similar elements. The reason was probably rushed production, and in newer units, such problems should not occur. But it is still very worrying. Against this background, underbody protections made of material that fell apart when wet are only very funny. Then the material was changed to another, although initially Tesla tried to convince users of these cars that they had driven through water. Actual driving through water, on the other hand, was the cause of another problem, tearing the rear bumper off the body. Some believe that both of the problems indicated, with the protection and the bumper, may be related. Damage to the protection would allow for greater than normal water pressure to be generated under the bumper, and, as a result, tear it off. Another issue also concerns water, specifically, leaks into the interior, especially into the rear trunk. The problem is improperly installed seals. Water can also collect under the mats and in the headlights, which in larger quantities can result in lighting failure. Heat pump failures used to be a problem, but it seems to have been fixed. Technical changes were made in 2020. Either way, another thing to check. The next problem in this category concerns the electrically opening trunk lid. The whole thing was designed and installed by Tesla in such a way that owners of these cars often shake their heads, thinking that it is some garage DIY, but it is not. But visual issues are the so-called half of the trouble. If one of the gas springs is damaged, opening and closing the lid may be problematic, and in extreme cases, the rear window and body may be damaged. It is recommended to check whether the trunk lid fits as always after closing, which is probably poorly but not very poorly. If we notice a difference compared to what it was before, it is recommended not to open the trunk and arrange a visit to the service center for the car. Many people also note the average quality of the interior. This applies to both the fit and the quality of the materials themselves. In addition, we have a lot of complaints about unwanted noises, but sometimes you have to turn a blind eye to this, because many people have switched to Tesla Model 3 from combustion cars, in which similar noises may have occurred, but were simply drowned out by the drive system. Another thing is that Tesla has improved the soundproofing and suspension work of the Model 3 in 2021 anyway. The screen and the multimedia system in general are of very good quality, but sometimes there are dulling or dead pixels, as well as defects in the comfort equipment of cars. There are also known cases of separation of the door panels from the doors. The upholstery has never been made of real leather, apart from the leather on the steering wheel, but here too, since autumn 2019, synthetic leather has been used. Some Tesla Model 3 users have concerns about its durability. It is generally believed, and with good reason, that items manufactured in China are of slightly better quality than those made in the US. Users of cars with 20-inch turbine rims should be careful near curbs or deeper holes. These rims can be damaged very easily. Typically for electric cars, the braking system can cause problems. This is caused by the fact that when slowing down gently, the brakes are simply not activated. The recuperation takes care of the problem, which can result in problems with corrosion, for example. It is true that compared to other BEVs, Teslas, including the Model 3, are relatively dynamic cars even in their basic versions, so you can expect that these brakes were actually used, but it is still worth checking their condition. In addition, the condition of the electric parking brake needs to be checked, which sometimes fails and does not apply or release fully. As part of the test, you can apply and release it several times, checking whether the process was correct each time. It should also be remembered that even the performance version is not suitable for strictly sporty driving. The brakes are very effective, but for a short time. It is also worth taking a look at the car's undercarriage. The Tesla Model 3 has thinner covers for the traction batteries than the brand's larger models, which means there is a slightly greater risk of damaging these covers and, in extreme cases, the batteries. The suspension is not prone to sudden failures, but it relatively often has problems with maintaining the correct geometry. It is worth checking it regularly. This Tesla model was and is produced in so many different variants that listing them one by one is pointless, especially since the engines and reduction gears are among the most durable elements of these cars, regardless of whether we are talking about the weakest Model 3 or the top 2 engine performance. Most sources do not mention anything at all about possible problems with the drive, rather, with its transmission. Sometimes the drive shafts give out. Depending on the version and place of production, the Tesla Model 3 can be equipped with one of three types of traction batteries. Lithium-ion Li-NCA, manufactured by Panasonic, in cars manufactured in the USA. Lithium-ion Li-NMC, manufactured by LG Chem, in Chinese-made cars. CATL-made lithium-ion LFP batteries, in base versions of the Model 3. The last type of battery differs in the shape of the cells, which is not cylindrical, type 2170, but cuboid. LFP batteries do not achieve the same energy density as Li-NCA or Li-NMC, but they do not contain nickel or cobalt, which is why they are cheaper to produce. What's more, they can be regularly charged to 100% capacity without the risk of premature wear, which cannot be said about Li-NCA and Li-NMC. LFP performed poorly in early models equipped with such batteries, but software updates have significantly improved the situation. Now, it is an option worth considering. Nevertheless, the durability of Tesla Model 3 batteries can be assessed at least decently, also in the case of components obtained from Panasonic and LG Chem. We hear quite regularly about cars that have traveled several 100,000 kilometers on the factory battery pack, and although the degradation of these can then reach about 30%, it is still enough to cover quite large distances on a single charge, which cannot be said about, for example, the first-generation Nissan Leaf, which is terrible in this respect. How to assess the condition of the traction battery? There are at least two ways to do this. The first requires using the onboard power consumption log and performing a few calculations. It is also recommended that the car be charged at least 50% to increase the accuracy of the readings. The second is easier. We charge the car to 100%. Check what the indicated range is and compare it with the technical data. So, for example, if we are dealing with a Tesla Model 3, the range of which when new was e.g. 448 kilometers, and now it is 430 kilometers, then the efficiency of the batteries is approximately 96%. Are there any charging problems? Yes, there are, but they usually concern extreme weather conditions, such as temperatures that are too low or too high. In the latter case, some users of these cars, at least in the States, have started using wet towels to lower the temperature of the supercharger cables, which allows for faster charging. We wrote about it here. Quality control. Proper quality control is something that Tesla could definitely use, not just for the Model 3 but in general, because then quite a few problems that other manufacturers don't have or have much less often would go away. However, it cannot be denied that what is most important in the Model 3, the drive system and the power supply, are also by far the most successful elements, which, both in terms of durability and efficiency, are not inferior to the larger players on the market and are often simply better. Anyone interested in a Tesla Model 3 must ask themselves whether the advantages of the drive are able to cover up the shortcomings of other elements of the car. Shortcomings that are reflected, for example in rankings such as TUV, where the Tesla Model 3 recently took last place in the category of 2- and 3-year-old cars because the percentage of serious defects reached almost 15%. This is probably a bit too much though. And if you know of any common errors, your comments are welcome.
Kami Pro Website ist Katalog aller Automarken, Motoren, Getriebe, was bricht und bei welchem Kilometerstand. Welche Pakete können Ihre Tasche hart belasten? Dieses und vieles mehr über Autos erfahren Sie auf Kami Pro.